The stars gleamed like scattered diamonds against the velvet backdrop of space as Nova Ardent approached Galactica Sigma Defense Station. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a steady counterpoint to the low hum of the transport shuttle. She straightened her uniform for the 10th time in as many minutes, her fingers lingering on the Earth insignia, a blue and green sphere embraced by stylized silver wings. It was the first and only Earth patch aboard the station, a fact that weighed on her shoulders like a physical burden. "Final approach to Docking Bay 7, announced the shuttle's AI in its emotionless tone. "Please prepare for gravitational adjustment." Nova gathered her minimal belongings, a small duffel containing her personal effects and a worn, leather-bound notebook filled with her grandfather's engine schematics. That notebook had been her Bible during the grueling years at Earth's Space Academy. Now, it would be her talisman in alien territory. The shuttle shuddered as it passed through the station's atmospheric shields. Through the viewport, Nova caught her first glimpse of the docking bay, a cavernous space filled with vessels of various designs, each bearing the insignia of different worlds within the Galactic Defense Alliance. Sleek, predatory fighters nestled alongside bulky transport ships, while maintenance drones buzzed between them like mechanical insects. As the shuttle settled onto the landing pad with a gentle thud, Nova took a deep breath. This was it, the culmination of years of struggle, of fighting against Earth's isolation and technological lag. She was the first human to be accepted into the Alliance, a testament to her skills as a pilot and her knowledge of propulsion systems. But she knew that being first also meant being scrutinized, judged, and likely found wanting. The shuttle's door hissed open, and Nova stepped onto the boarding ramp. Immediately, she felt the weight of dozens of eyes upon her, some curious, others dismissive, a few outright hostile. A delegation of Alliance officers waited at the foot of the ramp, their varied anatomies a stark reminder of how far from home she truly was. At the front stood a tall, imposing figure with iridescent blue skin and 4 arms crossed in what Nova recognized as a gesture of authority. Rear Admiral Zeltor, commander of the Galactica Sigma, regarded her with eyes that seemed to shift between gold and amber. "Nova Ardent of Earth," he stated, his voice a resonant baritone that seemed to vibrate in her chest. "You have arrived 3.7 minutes later than the scheduled docking time." Nova straightened her shoulders. "My apologies, Admiral. The transport encountered unexpected ionic disturbances in Sector 4. A ripple of what might have been laughter, or its various species equivalents, passed through the gathered officers. Lieutenant Vaughn, a willowy humanoid with pale, almost translucent skin, leaned toward a stocky, reptilian officer beside him. "Humans," Vaughn stage whispered, his voice carrying clearly in the bay's acoustics. "Always making excuses for their inadequacies. What do you expect from a species that only achieved faster-than-light travel a decade ago?" The reptilian officer, Chief Engineer Drac, Nova presumed from the briefing files, gave a derisive snort. "I still fail to understand why the Alliance accepted their application. Their propulsion technology is primitive at best, dangerous at worst." Nova bit the inside of her cheek, forcing her expression to remain neutral. She'd expected this reception, had prepared for it mentally during the long journey from Earth. Still, the reality stung more than she'd anticipated. Admiral Zeltor silenced his subordinates with a sharp gesture of his lower right hand. Pilot Ardent's credentials were thoroughly reviewed by the Alliance Admission Council. Her theoretical understanding of space-time manipulation and practical piloting skills exceeded minimum requirements. He fixed Nova with his unsettling gaze. Whether those skills translate to actual value remains to be seen. He gestured toward the station's interior. "Security Officer Mara will show you to your quarters and brief you on station protocols. Your first duty rotation begins at 0600 station time tomorrow." As the delegation dispersed, a muscular humanoid with prominent ridge-like features along her jawline stepped forward. Security Officer Mara's expression was unreadable as she sized Nova up. "Follow me," she said curtly, "and try to keep up. The station spans 12 levels in 5 sectors. Getting lost is not only inconvenient, but potentially hazardous." Nova shouldered her duffel and fell into step behind Mara, acutely aware of the stares and whispers that followed them through the corridors. The station was a marvel of engineering, all sweeping curves and efficient design, illuminated by a soft blue light that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Despite her circumstances, Nova couldn't help but admire the technology around her. "Your quarters are in Sector 3, Level 5, Mara explained as they entered a transport tube. "Junior Officers Section. You'll find your access codes in your quarters terminal. Mess Hall is on Level 2. Training facilities on Level 4. She glanced at Nova with something like grudging curiosity. "How long did your journey take from Earth?" 17 days on the transport, Nova replied, with 2 jump point transitions. Mara's ridges rippled slightly, a gesture Nova couldn't interpret. 17 days. Our Arcturian vessels make the same journey in 3. Nova bit back a defensive retort. Instead, she nodded. "I look forward to learning about your propulsion systems. Earth's technology has much room for improvement." The transport tube hummed to a stop, and the doors slid open to reveal a long corridor lined with identical doors. Mara led Nova to one marked with alien symbols and a smaller Earth alphabet designation. N. Ardent. 600 tomorrow, Mara reminded her. "Report to Bay 12 for assignment. Don't be late." She paused, then added, "An Ardent? Some advice, keep your head down and your expectations low. The first representatives of any species always have the hardest time." With that, she turned and left Nova standing alone before her quarters. The door slid open at her approach, revealing a small but efficiently designed living space. A sleep pod occupied one wall, while a compact workstation and refresher unit filled the remaining space. It was sparse but functional, much like the military accommodations she was used to on Earth. Nova dropped her duffel on the floor and sank onto the edge of the sleep pod. Exhaustion from the journey and the emotional strain of her arrival washed over her. She pulled out her grandfather's notebook, running her fingers over the worn cover. Inside were his handwritten notes on multi-frequency resonance engines, theoretical designs that had been dismissed as impractical by Earth's scientific community but had formed the basis of Nova's own theories on propulsion. "I made it, Grandpa," she whispered to the empty room. "Now I just have to prove I belong here." Sleep claimed her almost immediately, her dreams filled with starships and engines that sang like cosmic wails through the void of space. The next morning arrived with the artificial precision of a space station, no gradual dawn, just the sudden illumination of her quarters at the designated wake-up time. Nova quickly prepared herself, donning her uniform with meticulous care. At precisely 0545, she left her quarters and made her way to Bay 12, determined to arrive early for her first assignment. Bay 12 proved to be smaller than the main docking area, a utilitarian space filled with cargo containers and maintenance equipment. A handful of officers were already gathered, including the willowy Lieutenant Vaughn and Chief Engineer Drack. Their conversation halted abruptly as Nova entered. Well, Vaughn drawled, his pale eyes glittering with amusement. "The Earth specimen is punctual at least. Perhaps there's hope for your species after all." Nova met his gaze steadily. "Good morning, Lieutenant. Chief Engineer, I'm reporting for duty assignment." Drack's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile or a grimace. "Yes, we've been eagerly anticipating your arrival. The Admiral has assigned you a most appropriate vessel." A sense of foreboding settled in Nova's stomach as Drack led the way toward the far end of the bay. There, nestled between 2 sleek modern shuttles, sat what could only be described as a relic. The ship, if it could be called that, was a bulky, utilitarian craft with visible patch repairs and outdated design features. Its identification markings read GSV-113 in faded lettering. "Behold," Vaughn announced with theatrical flair. "Your command, Pilot Ardent. The GSV-113, a general supply vessel that has been in service for..." He turned to Drac. "How many cycles now, Chief?" 37, Drac replied, his reptilian features contorting into what Nova recognized as amusement. "She's due for decommissioning next year, but the Admiral thought she'd be perfect for our newest recruit." Nova kept her expression carefully neutral as she approached the vessel. Up close, it was even worse. Thermal plating mismatched from various repairs, outdated navigation arrays, and what appeared to be manually operated landing gear. This wasn't just an old ship, it was an antique by Alliance standards. "Your primary duty will be supply runs to the outposts in nearby sectors," Vaughn continued. "Nothing too challenging. Even Earth technology should be capable of handling basic transport functions." Nova circled the vessel, her trained eye already cataloging its deficiencies and potential. Despite its appearance, there was something about the old ship that called to her. Perhaps it was the underdog in her recognizing a kindred spirit. "When do I begin?" she asked, turning back to face the officers. "Eager, aren't we?" Drac chuckled, the sound like gravel in a mixer. "Your first mission is scheduled for tomorrow. Today, you'll familiarize yourself with the vessel and perform pre-flight checks." He tossed her an access chip. "Try not to break anything. The Alliance budget doesn't account for human error." With that parting shot, Drac and Vaughn left, their laughter echoing in the bay. Nova stood alone beside the GSV-113, clutching the access chip tightly in her palm. "Well, old girl," she murmured to the ship, "looks like we're both going to have to prove ourselves." The ship's access ramp lowered with a protesting whine as Nova activated the chip. The interior was as dated as the exterior, analog controls alongside retrofitted digital systems, exposed conduits running along bulkheads, and seating that had clearly been repaired multiple times. The cockpit was cramped, with a pilot's chair that didn't appear to have been designed with human ergonomics in mind. Nova settled into the chair anyway, running her hands over the control panels. Despite its age, the basic system seemed functional, if inefficient. She began a methodical check of each system, immersing herself in the task. It was almost therapeutic. This, at least, was something she knew how to do. Several hours into her inspection, a soft noise from the engine compartment caught her attention. She made her way aft, through the small cargo hold, to the engineering section. There, to her surprise, she found a small, furry humanoid hunched over an open panel. The alien, barely reaching Nova's chest in height, had rust-colored fur covering most of its body and large, expressive eyes that widened in surprise as Nova entered. "Oh, you must be the Earth pilot," the creature said, its voice surprisingly deep for its size. "I'm Rilk, junior engineer assigned to Bay 12 maintenance." Nova smiled, genuinely pleased to meet someone who didn't immediately mock her heritage. "Nova Ardent. I'm familiarizing myself with the GSV-113. Rilk's whiskers twitched in what seemed to be amusement. "Ah, yes, the 113. She's been around longer than I have." He patted the bulkhead affectionately. "Not the prettiest or fastest vessel in the fleet, but she's reliable." "What are you working on?" Nova asked, moving closer to peer at the open panel. "Routine maintenance on the frequency modulator for the main drive," Rilk explained. "The older models require more regular adjustments to maintain optimal performance." Nova's interest peaked immediately. "Frequency modulator? This vessel uses harmonic drive technology?" Rilk looked at her with newfound respect. "You're familiar with the principles?" "Yes, though it's an early implementation. The resonance chamber can only sustain single-frequency manipulation, primitive by today's standards but innovative when first introduced." Nova's mind raced with possibilities. Her grandfather's multi-frequency theories might actually be applicable to this engine design. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the panel. Riluk hesitated only briefly before stepping aside. Be my guest, though Chief Engineer Drak wouldn't approve of an untested pilot tampering with the engines. I won't tamper, Nova assured him, examining the exposed components with growing excitement. I just want to understand the system better. For the next few hours, Nova and Rilk worked side by side, with the junior engineer explaining the intricacies of the ship's propulsion system and Nova asking increasingly detailed questions. To Rilk's evident surprise, Nova's understanding of theoretical physics and propulsion mechanics was far beyond what he'd expected from a human. Your species has only recently achieved interstellar flight, Rilk remarked as they closed up the panel. Yet you speak of resonance harmonics like a Vega University graduate. Nova smiled, thinking of her grandfather's notebook. Earth's official technology might be behind the alliances, but we've had theorists working on advanced concepts for generations. Some ideas just needed the right application and resources. As station night cycle approached, Nova reluctantly prepared to leave. The GSV-113 had revealed itself to be a vessel of unexpected potential beneath its shabby exterior. Already, plans were forming in her mind, adaptations of her grandfather's designs that might work with the ship's existing architecture. Thank you for your help today, Rilk, she said sincerely. I appreciate it more than you know. The furry engineer ducked his head in what appeared to be embarrassment. It was refreshing to work with someone who asks intelligent questions. Will you be ready for tomorrow's supply run? I will, Nova promised, though I might come in early to run a few more diagnostics. That night, Nova barely slept. Instead, she pored over her grandfather's notebook, comparing his designs to what she'd seen in the GSV-113's engine room. With minor adaptations, his multi-frequency resonance theory could potentially be implemented in the ship's existing framework. It would require some creative engineering and parts that she'd have to fabricate herself. But it was possible. The station's night cycle was still in effect when Nova returned to Bay 12, carrying a small case of tools and components she'd replicated using her quarter's basic fabricator. The bay was deserted, giving her the privacy she needed to implement her modifications. Over the next several hours, Nova worked meticulously, installing a series of custom resonators in the engine's harmonic chamber and recalibrating the frequency modulators to accept multiple harmonics simultaneously. It was delicate work, requiring both precision and intuition, but Nova's hands remained steady, guided by years of study and her grandfather's visionary designs. As she closed the final panel, a voice from behind startled her. What exactly do you think you're doing? Nova turned to find Chief Engineer Drak standing at the engine room entrance. His reptilian eyes narrowed in suspicion. Behind him hovered Rilk, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Routine pre-flight preparations, Chief Engineer, Nova replied, rising to her feet. Drak's scaled nostrils flared. Those didn't look like routine preparations to me. Junior Engineer Rilk reported unusual activity in Bay 12 during rest cycle. Nova shot a glance at Rilk, who couldn't meet her eyes. She couldn't blame him as a junior engineer. His loyalty had to be to his superior officer. I was simply optimizing the existing systems for better efficiency, Nova explained, trying to keep her voice level. Nothing that would compromise the vessel's integrity. Drak pushed past her and began examining her modifications with growing agitation. These components aren't standard Alliance issue. What are these? He held up one of her custom resonators. This isn't in any Alliance engineering manual. It's a multi-frequency resonator, Nova admitted. Based on theoretical work from Earth, it should improve the engine's efficiency by allowing multiple harmonic frequencies to operate in synchronized patterns. Should? Drak nearly spat the word. You've installed untested, non-regulation components in an Alliance vessel based on should? He turned to Rilk. Remove these immediately and restore the engine to standard configuration. With respect, Chief Engineer, Nova interjected, stepping forward. The modifications are complete and fully integrated. Removing them now would take hours, and the supply run to Zeron Nebula is scheduled to depart in 40 minutes. Drax's scales darkened with anger. You dare to use the mission schedule as leverage? This is precisely why humans aren't ready for Alliance membership. No respect for protocols or chain of command. Nova stood her ground. The modifications are sound. I've triple-checked all connections and run simulation diagnostics. The ship will perform better than before. I guarantee it. Your guarantees mean nothing here. Drac hissed. He activated his comm unit. This is Chief Engineer Drac. I need to speak with Admiral Zeltor immediately regarding the Earth pilot. Nova's heart sank. Her first mission, possibly her entire Alliance career, was about to end before it truly began. She glanced at Rilke, who looked miserable, then back at her modifications. She knew they would work, knew it with the same certainty that had driven her grandfather to fill his notebook with designs decades ahead of their time. Minutes later, Admiral Zeltor's holographic image shimmered into existence in the engine room. His forearms crossed in his characteristic stance of authority. Explain this situation, Chief Engineer, he commanded. Drac detailed Nova's unauthorized modifications with growing indignation, holding up components as evidence of her insubordination. Throughout his report, the Admiral's expression remained unreadable, his golden eyes occasionally shifting to Nova's face. When Drac finished, Zeltor was silent for a long moment. Pilot Ardent, he finally said. Do you understand that tampering with Alliance equipment without authorization is grounds for immediate dismissal? Nova swallowed hard. Yes, Admiral. And yet you proceeded anyway. Why? Nova straightened her shoulders. Because I knew I could improve the system. Earth may be new to the galactic community, but we've been theorizing about space travel for centuries. My grandfather developed the multi-frequency resonance theory 50 years ago, but Earth lacked the resources to implement it properly. She gestured to the engine. The GSV-113's design is actually perfect for this application. It could increase efficiency by at least 30% while reducing strain on the existing components. 30%, Zeltor repeated, his tone neutral. An ambitious claim. I stand by it, Nova replied, meeting his gaze steadily. The Admiral's eyes shifted to Drac. Chief Engineer, your assessment? Drac's tail lashed in agitation. The design is unorthodox and untested. It violates at least 7 Alliance engineering protocols. However, he hesitated, clearly reluctant to continue. The theoretical principles appear sound based on my preliminary examination. Nova couldn't hide her surprise at this grudging admission. Admiral Zeltor's hologram flickered as he considered the situation. The Zeron Nebula supply run is critical. The research outpost there has reported dangerous plasma fluctuations that could cut off their communications entirely. Delaying the mission to reconfigure the engine is not an option. His gaze returned to Nova. Pilot Ardent, you will proceed with the mission as scheduled. However, Security Officer Mara will accompany you to monitor both your performance and the modified engine's behavior. One of his lower hands made a sharp gesture. If your modifications cause any malfunction, or if you deviate from the mission parameters in any way, your position in the Alliance will be terminated immediately. Is that understood? Yes, Admiral, Nova replied, relief flooding through her. Thank you for the opportunity. As the hologram disappeared, Drac fixed Nova with a cold stare. Don't thank him yet. Human. The Zeron Nebula run may seem routine, but the plasma disturbances make it one of the more challenging routes. Your modified engine will be tested thoroughly. With that ominous warning, he stalked from the engine room, leaving Nova with the distinct impression that he expected, perhaps even hoped, for her to fail. Rilke approached hesitantly. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't mean to get you in trouble, but when I saw the components you were installing... Nova shook her head. You did your duty, Rilke. I knew the risks when I started. She managed to smile. Besides, now I get to prove that my modifications actually work. I hope they do, Rilke replied, his large eyes solemn. For your sake. The preparation for departure proceeded with tense efficiency. Security Officer Mara arrived, her expression as unreadable as ever, and took position in the co-pilot's seat without comment. Nova completed the pre-flight checks, keenly aware of Mara's watchful gaze noting her every move. Pre-flight checks complete. GSV 113 requesting clearance for departure, Nova announced over the comm. GSV 113, you are cleared for departure, came the response from station control. Proceed to launch bay. The ship hummed to life as Nova engaged the thrusters, easing the vessel out of its berth. Already, she could feel the difference in the engine's response, smoother, more responsive, with none of the hesitation she'd noted during her initial tests. As they cleared the station's protective shields and entered open space, Nova allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. The first hurdle cleared. Setting course for Xeron Nebula, she informed Mara, inputting the coordinates into the navigation system. Estimated travel time, 4 hours at standard cruising speed. Mara nodded curtly. Proceed. The journey began uneventfully, the modified engine performing exactly as Nova had predicted. The vessel moved through space with a grace that belied its aged exterior, consuming significantly less fuel than its specifications suggested it should. Nova monitored the engine readings closely, making minute adjustments to the resonance frequencies as needed to maintain optimal performance. Your modifications appear to be functioning, Mara observed after the first hour, breaking her silence. Though I'm no engineer, Nova glanced at her. Thank you. The multi-frequency approach allows for more efficient energy distribution through the drive system. It's like... She searched for an analogy. Like a choir instead of a solo singer. Multiple harmonizing voices create a stronger, more resilient sound than a single voice ever could. Mara's facial ridges rippled slightly. An unusual comparison. My grandfather used to say that the best engines sing to space, and space sings back. Nova explained, feeling slightly self-conscious. He believed that propulsion was as much art as science. Your grandfather, Mara said carefully. He designed these modifications? Nova nodded. The theoretical framework, yes. He was decades ahead of Earth's official space program, but no one would listen to him. Too radical, they said. She adjusted a setting as they approached a minor gravitational distortion. He died before Earth joined the galactic community. Never got to see his theories put into practice. Something that might have been understanding flickered across Mara's features. Yet you carried his work forward. Someone had to, Nova replied simply. The conversation lapsed into silence again as they continued toward the nebula. Gradually, the starscape before them began to change, the darkness of space giving way to swirling clouds of luminous gas and dust. The outer reaches of the Xeron Nebula. Beginning nebula approach sequence, Nova announced, adjusting the shields to compensate for the increased particle density. Sensors are detecting the expected plasma fluctuations, adjusting course to minimize exposure. The nebula was a breathtaking sight. Vast swirls of purple, blue, and green gas illuminated from within by the light of young stars forming in its depths. But its beauty concealed dangers, pockets of highly charged plasma that could disrupt ship systems and communication arrays. As they penetrated deeper into the nebula, navigation became increasingly challenging. The sensors struggled to penetrate the dense clouds, and the plasma interfered with the long-range scanners. Nova relied increasingly on instinct and the ship's more immediate feedback systems to guide their path. Plasma density increasing, she noted, frowning at the readings. This is more severe than the briefing indicated. Mara leaned forward, checking her own console. The outpost reported worsening conditions. That's why their supply run was prioritized. Nova nodded. concentrating on maintaining their course through the treacherous clouds. The GSV-113 responded beautifully to her commands, the modified engine adjusting automatically to the changing conditions. Despite the challenging environment, they were making good time. "Research outpost should be visible soon," Nova said, straining to see through the colorful haze that surrounded them. Approximately 12 minutes to arrival at current speed. Suddenly, the ship's proximity alert blared to life. Nova's hands flew across the controls, bringing up enhanced sensor readings. Multiple objects approaching rapidly from the port side. Before Mara could respond, 3 sleek vessels emerged from the nebula's concealing clouds, their weapon systems visibly powered and targeted on the GSV-113. "Alliance vessel," came a harsh voice over the comm system. "This is Captain Raven Talon of the Scarlet Jackals. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded." Nova's blood ran cold. The Scarlet Jackals, one of the most notorious pirate bands operating in the fringe sectors, known for ruthlessly targeting supply vessels and research outposts. They were exactly the kind of danger the briefing had failed to mention. "Pirates," Mara spat, her hand moving to the weapon at her hip, a weapon that would be useless against 3 armed ships. They must have been monitoring the outpost's distress calls. The lead pirate vessel fired a warning shot that sizzled past their bow, leaving a trail of ionized particles in its wake. "This is your final warning," Raven Talon's voice came again. "Surrender your cargo, or we'll take it from your debris field." Nova's mind raced. The GSV-113 had minimal defensive capabilities and no weapons to speak of. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in a nebula that limited their communication with the station. By all logical assessments, surrender was the only option that didn't end with their destruction. But logic wasn't the only tool at Nova's disposal. "Hold on," she told Mara, her hands moving to a secondary control panel she'd installed during her modifications. "I'm going to try something." Before Mara could object, Nova activated the full multi-frequency resonance system, pushing it beyond the conservative settings she'd been using for the journey. The engine's hum deepened, changing tone to something that vibrated through the ship's very structure. "What are you doing?" Mara demanded as the ship shuddered around them. "Creating a harmonic shield," Nova replied, her attention fixed on the readouts. "My grandfather theorized that properly tuned resonance fields could interact with plasma in ways similar to electromagnetic manipulation." The pursuing pirates, apparently tired of waiting for surrender, opened fire. Energy beams streaked toward the GSV-113, only to curve and dissipate as they entered the invisible field, now surrounding the supply vessel. "It worked!" Nova exclaimed, genuine surprise mixing with her triumph. "The resonance field is disrupting their targeting systems and weapon coherence." Mara stared at her in disbelief. "That's impossible." "Theoretically impossible," Nova corrected, already adjusting the controls to maintain the protective field while diverting power to the main drive. "Practically, well, we're still here, aren't we?" The pirate vessels, recovering from their surprise, began a coordinated pursuit. The GSV-113, despite its age and bulk, responded to Nova's commands with unexpected agility, weaving through the nebula's gas clouds. "They're still gaining," Mara warned, monitoring the pursuit vessels. "And they're spreading out to cut off escape vectors." Nova nodded grimly. The harmonic shield was working, but it wouldn't hold forever. Eventually, the pirates would adjust their weapons or simply ram them. They needed to reach the outpost, where the defensive systems could provide protection. "I need to push the engine further," she decided, fingers hovering over the controls. "But it could destabilize the entire resonance system." Mara's expression hardened. "Do what you must. Pilot, I would rather risk mechanical failure than guarantee capture by the Scarlet Jackals." That was all the permission Nova needed. She engaged what her grandfather had called full resonance harmony, a theoretical state where multiple frequency patterns synchronized perfectly, creating a momentary phase shift in the ship's interaction with space itself. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The GSV-113 surged forward with such sudden acceleration that both Nova and Mara were pressed back into their seats. The nebula outside became a streaking blur of color as the ship achieved velocities that should have been impossible for its design. Behind them, the pirate vessels attempted to match their speed, but the acceleration had caught them unprepared. The distance between them widened rapidly. "It's working!" Mara exclaimed, a rare note of excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. "They can't match our speed." Nova didn't respond immediately. Her attention focused entirely on controlling the ship through this unprecedented state. The engine was operating well beyond its designed parameters, sustained only by the harmonizing effect of her modifications. Warning indicators flashed across her console, but she pushed onward, feeling the ship respond to her touch like a living thing. "We can't maintain this speed for long," she finally said, her voice tight with concentration. "The harmonics will destabilize if pushed too far. But we don't need long. The outpost should be just ahead." As if in answer to her words, the swirling nebula parted to reveal their destination, a compact research facility anchored to a relatively stable region of the nebula. Its defensive arrays were already activated, a response to the pirate presence in the sector. "Outpost Zarin, this is Alliance supply vessel GSV-113, Mara transmitted urgently. "We are under pursuit by Scarlet Jackal pirates and request immediate docking clearance and defensive support." The response came instantly. "GSV-13, this is Outpost Zarin. Defensive systems targeting hostile vessels. Approach vector transmitted to your navigation system. Proceed with caution." Nova plotted the approach, but a new problem presented itself. The pirates, recognizing their destination, had adjusted their formation to block the standard approach vectors. They couldn't maintain their current speed through the complex docking maneuver, which meant slowing down and becoming vulnerable again. "We'll never make the approach with them blocking our path," Mara observed grimly. "And the outpost's weapons won't fire while we're in their line of sight." Nova studied the tactical display. An idea forming, a desperate, possibly suicidal idea, but one that just might work. "There is another way," she said slowly. "But it's never been tested outside of theoretical models." Mara gave her a sharp look. "More of your grandfather's theories?" "The most controversial one," Nova admitted. "He called it spatial folding, using multi-frequency resonance to create a momentary discontinuity in space-time." She met Mara's gaze steadily. "Essentially, a micro-jump without conventional jump drive technology." "That's," Mara began. "Impossible? So was our current speed," Nova pointed out. "The theory is sound, and the engine modifications I've made should support it. It would be a one-time maneuver. The system would burn out afterward, but it could put us directly at the docking bay, bypassing the pirates entirely." Mara was silent for a long moment, weighing their limited options against this unprecedented risk. Finally, she nodded. "Do it. But if we die, I'm filing a formal complaint against you in the afterlife." Despite the tension, Nova found herself smiling at the unexpected humor. "Noted." She reconfigured the resonance system one final time, setting up the precise frequency pattern that her grandfather had detailed in his most speculative writings. According to his theories, the correct harmonics could momentarily bend the fabric of space itself, creating a bridge between 2 points that bypass the intervening distance. Initiating spatial fold in 3, 2, 1. Nova activated the sequence. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then the universe outside the viewports shifted. There was no other word for it. The colorful gases of the nebula appeared to fold in on themselves, as if space itself were a piece of fabric being creased. Stars blurred, stretched, and then snapped back into focus. And suddenly, impossibly, they were elsewhere. The GSV-113 emerged less than 100 meters from the outpost's main docking bay, having bypassed several kilometers of intervening space in an instant. Behind them, the pirate vessels continued their formation, momentarily confused by their quarry's impossible disappearance. "By the 7 moons," Mara whispered, her professional composure shattered by what she had just witnessed. "You actually did it." Nova's hands trembled slightly as she guided the ship into the docking bay. The engine was emitting ominous sounds. The resonance system pushed well beyond its design limits by the spatial fold maneuver. Warning indicators flashed across every console. "Docking complete," she announced as the clamps secured the vessel in place. "Engine shut down commencing." Now, as the engines powered down, a series of small explosions echoed through the ship as overtaxed components finally gave way. The lights flickered, then stabilized as the backup systems engaged. "Perfect timing," Nova remarked, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Any longer, and we might have had a core breach." The docking bay was already filling with outpost personnel, some rushing to secure the supplies, others manning defensive positions as the pirate vessels, having realized what had happened, approached the outpost more cautiously. "They won't attack the outpost directly," Mara said, unbuckling from her seat. "Not with the defense systems active. They'll retreat to the nebula and wait for easier prey." She turned to Nova, her expression a complex mixture of disbelief, respect, and lingering suspicion. "What you just did, it shouldn't have been possible." Nova shrugged, suddenly exhausted as adrenaline ebbed from her system. Sometimes the theoretical becomes practical when necessity demands it. Before Mara could respond, her comm unit chimed. "Security Officer Mara," came Admiral Zeltor's voice. "Report status immediately." Mara exchanged a glance with Nova before responding. "Admiral, we have successfully delivered supplies to Outpost Zeron despite an ambush by Scarlet Jackal pirates." She hesitated, then continued. "Sir, Pilot Arden's engine modifications proved instrumental to our success. Her actions saved both the mission and our lives." There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. "Understood. A defense squadron has been dispatched to secure the sector and escort you back to the station once repairs are complete. I expect a full report upon your return." "Yes, Admiral," Mara acknowledged before ending the transmission. She turned back to Nova. "You've bought yourself some goodwill with this mission. Pilot Ardent, but don't expect the Admiral or Chief Engineer Drac to simply overlook your breach of protocols." Nova nodded, understanding the complex political situation she'd created. "I didn't expect them to, but maybe they'll listen now when I talk about Earth's propulsion theories." Mara's facial ridges rippled in what Nova was beginning to recognize as amusement. "Oh, they'll listen. The entire station will be talking about how a human pilot in an obsolete supply vessel outran the Scarlet Jackals and performed an impossible spatial maneuver." She moved toward the exit. "Come on, we need to coordinate with the outpost staff about repairs." As they left the ship, Nova cast a fond glance back at the battered GSV-113. Despite its age and the damage it had sustained, the vessel had proven itself beyond all expectations. Like her, it had been underestimated based on appearances alone. The repairs took 3 days, during which Nova worked alongside the outpost's engineering team to restore the GSV-113's basic functionality. The multi-frequency resonance system was beyond repair with the available resources, but the conventional drive systems were restored to operational status. The defense squadron arrived on the 2nd day, bringing news that the Scarlet Jackals had been intercepted and captured while attempting to flee the sector. Lieutenant Vaughn, commanding the squadron, couldn't quite hide his astonishment at finding Nova and Mara alive and the mission completed successfully. "The entire station is buzzing with rumors," he told them during the pre-departure briefing. "Some say you developed a new form of jump drive. Others claim you made contact with nebula-dwelling entities that transported you to safety." His pale eyes studied Nova with new consideration. "The truth, I suspect, is equally remarkable." "The truth," Nova replied evenly, "is in my report to the Admiral." Vaughn's lips twitched. Yes, I imagine it is. Well, Pilot Ardent, it seems I may have been hasty in my assessment of human capabilities. It wasn't quite an apology, but Nova recognized it as the closest thing to one she was likely to receive. Easy mistake to make, Lieutenant. We're full of surprises. The journey back to Galactica Sigma was uneventful, with the GSV-113 nestled safely within the protective formation of Alliance fighters. Nova used the time to prepare her detailed report and recommendations for future applications of multi-frequency resonance technology. Upon their return to the station, Nova was summoned immediately to Admiral Zeltor's command center. She entered with trepidation, unsure whether to expect commendation or censure for her actions. The Admiral's spacious office offered a spectacular view of the surrounding starfield through a vast viewport. Zeltor himself stood before it, his forearms clasped behind his back as he contemplated the cosmos beyond. Chief Engineer Drack and Security Officer Mara were already present, along with several other high-ranking officers Nova didn't recognize. Pilot Ardent, Zeltor acknowledged without turning. Your report makes for fascinating reading. Nova stood at attention. Thank you, Admiral. Fascinating, he continued, finally turning to face her. But also deeply concerning. You modified Alliance equipment without authorization, implemented untested theoretical technology in a functioning vessel, and executed maneuvers that violated our understanding of spatial physics. His golden eyes fixed on her. By all Alliance regulations, these actions merit immediate dismissal from service. Nova's heart sank, but she maintained her composure. I understand, Admiral. However, Zeltor continued, one of his lower hands making a dismissive gesture, regulations must occasionally yield to results. The capture of the Scarlet Jackals represents a significant victory for security in that sector, and your innovative approach to propulsion technology has captured the interest of our scientific community. He moved to his desk and activated a holographic display. The familiar shape of the GSV-113 rotated slowly above the surface, alongside schematics of Nova's modifications. Chief Engineer Drack has spent the past 4 days analyzing the remains of your multi-frequency resonance system, Zeltor explained. His findings, while preliminary, suggest that your grandfather's theories may have significant applications for next-generation propulsion systems. Drack stepped forward, his reptilian features set in a grudging expression of respect. The harmonic patterns you established create energy efficiencies we haven't observed in conventional drives, he admitted, and the spatial folding phenomenon, while dangerously implemented, represents a theoretical breakthrough that warrants further investigation. Nova could hardly believe what she was hearing. You're continuing the research? Under proper Alliance protocols, Drack emphasized, his old sternness reasserting itself. With appropriate safety measures and testing procedures, and with your involvement, Zeltor added, surprising Nova further. If you're willing to work within Alliance guidelines going forward. Absolutely, Admiral, Nova replied without hesitation. My goal has always been to contribute Earth's theoretical knowledge to the Alliance's practical expertise. Zeltor's expression remained impassive, but something like approval flickered in his golden eyes. Then we are in agreement. The GSV-113 will be recommissioned as a test platform for the continued development of multi-frequency resonance technology. You will serve as primary pilot and project consultant, working under Chief Engineer Drack's supervision. He activated another control, and the holographic display changed to show the ship with a new designation emblazoned on its hull. Harmony's Edge. A more fitting name, Zeltor explained, for a vessel that bridges Earth's theoretical vision with Alliance engineering excellence. The symbolism wasn't lost on Nova. Thank you, Admiral. I won't disappoint you. See that you don't, he replied, though without the dismissive tone that had characterized their earlier interactions. The Alliance progresses through the contributions of all member worlds. even the newest ones, perhaps especially those, as they bring fresh perspectives to old problems. As the meeting concluded and Nova left the command center, she found Mara waiting in the corridor outside. "Congratulations, Pilot Ardent," the security officer said, her facial ridges arranged in what Nova now recognized as a smile. Or should I say, Project Consultant Ardent. "Nova is fine," she replied, still processing the unexpected turn of events. "I can hardly believe it." "Believe it," Mara advised. "The Admiral doesn't change course easily, but when he does, his commitment is absolute. You've earned a rare opportunity." They walked together toward the main concourse, passing other Alliance personnel who regarded Nova with new curiosity and, in some cases, respect. "I noticed Lieutenant Vaughn wasn't at the meeting," Nova remarked. Mara's ridges rippled in amusement. "He's been assigned to document the official capture of the Scarlet Jackals, a lengthy process involving much paperwork and very little glory. Some might call it a fitting consequence for his earlier skepticism." Nova couldn't help but smile at the Admiral's subtle form of justice. "And you? Back to security duty?" "For now," Mara confirmed. "Though I've requested assignment to the Harmony's Edge project as security liaison, someone needs to keep you from blowing up the station with your experimental harmonics." The teasing note in her voice marked a transformation in their relationship, from suspicious oversight to something approaching friendship. As they reached the viewing deck overlooking Bay 12, Nova caught sight of the newly designated Harmony's Edge. Work crews swarmed around it, already beginning the process of rebuilding and enhancing the multi-frequency resonance system under Drax's meticulous supervision. Nearby, Rilke directed a team of junior engineers, his small, furry form animated with enthusiasm as he explained concepts that had been theoretical just days ago. "Your grandfather would be proud," Mara observed quietly. Nova nodded, emotion tightening her throat as she watched his theories take physical form before her eyes. "He always said that the best ideas need time to resonate, like sound waves finding their perfect harmonic." She placed her hand against the viewport, as if reaching toward the ship that had transformed her status from tolerated outsider to respected contributor. The journey ahead would be challenging. Working with Drax would test her patience, and the technical obstacles were significant. But for the first time since arriving at Galactica Sigma, Nova felt that she truly belonged. "Time to resonate," she murmured to herself. A promise and a declaration of purpose rolled into one. The stars beyond the viewport seemed to gleam a little brighter, as if in answer.